Hello, Psalm 89. This is a great psalm, and it's really a key passage in the scriptures regarding a very important covenant, a covenant that God made with David. And I just wanted to do a quick review on the major covenants of the Bible because that puts this in context. Now, this psalm is the last psalm in the Levitical Psalms, the last psalm of I believe the third book. Yes, that's correct. Psalm 90 would be the beginning of book four, and so this is that's where we are in the book of Psalms, and the Psalms regarding the Levitical, the temple worship are concluded with this reminder of God's covenant that He makes with David. And really, the other key passage is where the covenant was made in 2 Samuel 7, verses 11 through 16. But let's take a look at the major covenants real quick. Um, there's five biblical covenants. I'm going to add one category ahead of that. Some people throw in kind of several in that first category. You might call it the Edenic, the covenant, just by the nature of God creating the Garden of Eden. There's a covenant there. I kind of just lump it all into the Adamic covenant, and that's just the original covenant that God made with His creation and with mankind, saying, "If you obey me, then I'm going to bless you and walk with you and be with you. And if you disobey, then you'll be cast out. You'll surely die. You'll be cut off from eternal life." And so it's the original covenant with mankind regarding works. Are we going to obey? Are we going to disobey? And that was broken by Adam, so we can kind of lump that into the Adamic covenant. But the first major actual covenant that God makes um, following that fall of man would be with Noah. And so we call that the Noahic covenant. And this one is unconditional, meaning that God makes a covenant with Noah. He says, "I will not destroy the earth with a flood again. And I am going to remind you every time you see the rainbow in the sky, I'm going to remind you of my mercy. And I'm going to remind you that I will not be destroying the earth with a flood again, like I have done." And he also promises that the seasons will not end, which is a wonderful promise that we will have the regular seasons. Now, if you're in Southern California, it's just basically like you're cold and you're dry, or you're warm and you're cold seasons. But most places in the world, like here in Oregon, we have four seasons, four true seasons. The leaves are fall in the fall time. Then we have the winter and the spring. Everything starts growing again. Then we have the summer, heading on into the harvest season of fall again. So just those seasons that God is going to sustain, no matter how sinful man gets, until the end. He was going to keep those seasons going, the sun and the moon and everything doing its thing. So that's the Noahic covenant. The next major covenant would be the Abrahamic covenant, which is very key, and that is an unconditional covenant. Genesis 12 is where that's established, and God promises there's three kind of main recipients of this covenant. One is Abraham personally, and God promises to bless Abraham, um, yeah, as an individual. The second category would be to bless. God promises, excuse me, to bless his descendants, and he promises to bless them eternally. That means that they cannot be utterly destroyed. His descendants will, his bloodline will continue forever, never to be wiped out. And remember, this is an unconditional covenant that God makes with Abraham. He does this covenant with Abraham, where Abraham is put to sleep, and God basically ratifies this covenant with himself on his own name. Abraham doesn't even sign the document, so to speak. And so, as if God could change, then this covenant would be conditional, but he cannot. And he can, and when he says he's going to do something, it is unconditional indeed. And so God is going to bless the bloodline, the direct descendants of Abraham, and those well, with land, with a great nation, and they will not be destroyed. Okay, and then the third category of the Abrahamic covenant would be that the whole world is going to be blessed through Israel, and there's a number of facets to that, but basically, those who bless the nation of Israel will be blessed, is the key idea there, and God has indeed blessed uh, me and you with not only has He given us His word through the nation of Israel, for this is their story basically, and we're reading their mail, the we're reading Israelite mail, but we are blessed because the Messiah, Jesus Christ, has come through the nation of Israel, which is the Davidic covenant. But also we are yeah, the whole world will be blessed. This is not going to change in the future. This is where the difference between the sheep and the goats. The sheep are going to be the ones who bless Messiah, and the goats are going to be the ones who. No, I'm sorry. The sheep are the ones who bless the nation of Israel through the tribulation and enter on into the millennial kingdom, and the goats are those who don't. And so this is a principle that is fact, and it's going to remain that way because it's unconditionally promised to Abraham by God Himself. And then we have the Mosaic covenant, which is back to a conditional covenant. So the Mosaic, this is Moses, and they're on Mount Sinai, also called the Sinaitic covenant, I believe, and that's in Exodus chapter 19, verses 5 through 8. And these 10 commandments were given to the nation of Israel through Moses, as Moses and Joshua went up there on Mount Sinai, and they came down with those 10 commandments. And the basic idea of that is, if you obey, if you uphold your end of this covenant, God says to His people, then I'm going to bless you. I'm going to bless your socks off. But if you disobey and you turn me in for idols, and you go for disobedience, then you will be cursed. So obedience equals blessings, and then disobedience equals curses. And the list of curses is long indeed. Okay, so conditionally, this Mosaic covenant, and that's what the law is. Those 10 commandments are basically the foundation for all the law that there is. The first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, the law, is a fleshing out of those 10 commandments. First 4 are how we relate to God. The last 6 are how we relate to mankind according to God's ways. And so these were given to the nation of Israel, Abraham's bloodline, and they would either be blessed or cursed as a result of upholding it. And then the fifth one I have here, following the Mosaic covenant, is the Davidic covenant, and that's what Psalm 89 is about. And so this is unconditional. This covenant that God makes with David has to do with David himself and his royal seed that will be an everlasting. There will be an everlasting seed upheld of the line of David that will be king of this nation that's promised to always exist. So God has promised the nation, but He's also promised the nation a king, and that king is going to be Davidic. And so we see that this is a very key covenant regarding the king that we are looking for, and that would be the one who has already been revealed in Jesus Christ, the Messiah. He is not yet reigning and ruling on this earth as the Davidic heir over the nation of Israel, and that's why we are expecting that to happen, that He is going to come for His church first. That's the rapture, and then He is going to come with the church to fulfill this Davidic covenant. And then finally we have the new covenant, and that's where that's this, you can call it the Messianic covenant, the better covenant, as it's referred to in the New Testament. But that's in Isaiah 59, Jeremiah 31, Ezekiel 36. It's in Hebrews chapter 8. But this new covenant is the one of grace, where God, through Israel, has blessed the whole earth with his mercy, with his grace, with his faithfulness. And this is what the church is founded on, this new covenant. Okay, so you have the basic ones, the Adamic covenant. You have Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, and then we have the new covenant that we have currently available, if I could say it that way, that if you put your trust in Jesus Christ, that what he did for you on the cross would be satisfactory for your reconciliation with God to be made perfect, and that you would be brought back into right relationship, that covenant relationship through Christ and his work. Because if it was just left up to us, we would be covenant breakers. But Christ becomes our covenant ratifier. He becomes the covenant maker on our behalf with the Father. So I know that's a lot, but it's really important to understand that, because this Davidic covenant is key to understanding a lot. And if you don't get this right, your whole eschatology, what your hope is grounded in, and what you're looking forward to in the future was going to be a little bit skewed, a lot skewed. Remember, this Davidic covenant is unconditional. That means that the nation, just like the Abrahamic covenant is unconditional, so the nation coming from Abraham and the king coming from David must be eternal. That means Israel cannot be destroyed based on God's own word and his own covenant that he ratified in his own blood, that Israel is meant to be forever. And that is very, very key in understanding what is to come. If you think that the church has replaced Israel, you're going to be all confused, because that's not how God's covenant with Israel has been written, ratified, and it's not going to be how it is fulfilled. You have to have Israel, the nation of Israel, Abraham's descendants, and the king, Messianic king, Jesus Christ. You have to have those things to come, fulfilling these covenants, because they have not yet done so. So verses 1 and 2 just start off with a song, and just singing the praise that this covenant exists. A contemplation of Ethan the Ezrahite, probably written as the nation of Israel, either during David's time or Solomon's time, as the nation was just falling apart. Perhaps when or after it split in Solomon's day, or leading up to that. They're like going, wait a second, God has promised that this is going to be an eternal kingdom, and it looks like it's fallen apart at the seams. This isn't good. And so there's an appeal to his mercy, to his faithfulness. Over and over again throughout the psalm, God's faithfulness is the theme. So it starts off with a song. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing. If you've heard that melody before, it's an old classic. With my mouth I will make known your faithfulness to all generations. For I have said, mercy shall be built up forever. Your faithfulness you shall establish in the very heavens. And I think of that mercy and that faithfulness when God gave Noah that sign, that rainbow in the sky. That rainbow is to say mercy, God's mercy. Even when mankind turns its back on me, I'm going to show mercy. That's what that rainbow is supposed to remind us of. Every time we see a rainbow, we're supposed to think of mercy. God has infinite mercy in his nature and his character, which is why it's a tragedy that is not what people think of nowadays in modern times when they think of a rainbow. I'm training myself to think rainbow, that's God's mercy. That's biblically what we ought to be thinking about. And then verse 3 we'll start off with that Davidic covenant, and really it goes all the way through 37, and through that Selah that we have this declaration of this Davidic covenant by the psalmist Ethan. I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn to my servant David, your seed I will establish forever and build up your throne to all generations. Selah. Okay, so this is about David. It's a Davidic covenant, but it's also about the seed. It says, your seed I will establish forever. And specifically, that's the messianic seed. And we know that because we have uh, Jesus Christ, who has come and fulfilled and revealed himself as the Messiah, dying for our sins and raising again from the dead, proving to us with miracles and signs and wonders that he is this seed of David, that this psalm is about Jesus. It's about David, but it's even more so Jesus Christ fulfilling these words. So you can think about David saying these things, but also think about it's Jesus who is saying these things, because ultimately he is the son of David who this covenant really is ultimately about. Verse 5, and the heavens will praise your wonders, O Lord, your faithfulness also in the assembly of the saints. For who in the heavens can be compared to the Lord? Who among the sons of the mighty can be likened to the Lord? God is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the saints, and to be held in reverence by all those around him. O Lord, God of hosts, who is mighty like you, O Lord? Your faithfulness also surrounds you. Your rule and raging of the sea. When its waves rise, you still them. You have broken Rahab in pieces as one who is slain. You have scattered your enemies with your mighty arm. The heavens are yours, the earth also is yours. Now I'm going to continue. Please read this in its entirety, but due to time, I'm going to jump ahead. There you go, verse 24. But my faithfulness and my mercy shall be with him. In my name his horn shall be, and in my name his horn shall be exalted. So again, that theme of faithfulness. Verse 27, also I will make him my firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth. And we know that Jesus Christ is truly the firstborn. David wasn't the firstborn in his own family. He wasn't even the firstborn of Jesse. He was the lastborn of Jesse in that sense. So he was the last one in line for any inheritance to be given to him by blood. But Jesus Christ is actually not just a firstborn of a father, but the firstborn of the Father. And so ultimately, these kinds of things can only be said about Jesus Christ, that God is going to make him my firstborn, he says. Verse 26, it says, he shall cry to me, you are my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation. Isn't it wonderful to think of Jesus quoting these things? That it's Jesus saying, you are my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation. Do you ever wonder what Jesus was praying when he went up on, when he would steal away from the crowds and he would go up onto a mountain or a quiet place in a garden and he would just pray for hours and hours? Well, let me just remind you that these are the kinds of things that Jesus would have been praying. You are my Father, he would pray. My God, you're the rock of my salvation. This is what Jesus was saying in prayer, to encourage his spirit, to keep his eyes focused on obedience and perfection and the joy that was set before him to endure all that he was going to have to endure. And then we see that Selah in verse 37, where it kind of transitions then to a little bit different mood. Okay, then we have this 38 through 45 is kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? But you have cast off and abhorred. You have been furious with your anointed. You have renounced the covenant of your servant. You have profaned his crown by casting it to the ground. Wait a second, Matt, I thought you said this was an unconditional covenant. Well, in one sense, you could say the Davidic covenant is uniquely both conditional and unconditional. Conditional in the sense that for the sake of chastisement, God with his people has uh, for a time, for a season, seemingly cast off and abhorred and renounced, right? But um, but only temporarily. That's the key. In that sense, it's unconditional. So as you travel through time, you might say, "Oh, look, this covenant has been broken," and God is not fulfilling His Davidic covenant with His people. He is not. He does not have uh, a Davidic king ruling and reigning over a people. Right now, there's not even a people to be. Well, there is now, actually. I'm sorry, but for many years, many centuries, there wasn't even an Israelite people for there to be a king over. But God has brought His people back to His land, and He is moving everything towards that fulfillment as Jesus comes for His church, but then comes with His church and sets up His millennial reign with His people. And so that's why we say the Davidic covenant is unconditional, even though you have phrases like this, like you've broken this down, you've profaned the crown by casting it to the ground. Well, yes, but only temporarily. And then I'll just close with this. Verse 46, how long, Lord, will you hide yourself forever? Will your wrath burn like fire? Remember how short my time is. For what futility have you created all the children of men? What man can live and not see death? Can he deliver his life from the power of the grave? And we say things like this, like, how long, God, is this going to be going on? This trial, the circumstance of my life, how long, right? Well, you know what's so wonderful about that cry is when we cry that out generally, or specifically when this is being fulfilled, this phrase in this Davidic covenant sense, it's not just a cry of despair, but it's actually a cry of hope. It's a cry that there is faith in God's nature and a dependence on His character that He is going to fulfill what He has said. So when you say how long, the assumption to that question is, I know you're going to, but how long? I know you're going to bring deliverance. I know you're going to bring salvation. I know you're going to establish the things that you've said, but how long? Now, I think of Jesus saying this, how long? Well, Jesus knew everything, right? He's God. Why would Jesus be quoting this, how long? Well, He told His disciples that only the Father knows when the time has come. Only the Father knows. So Jesus, at least in one sense, is unaware of one thing. He's unaware of the timing of when the Father says, go get your bride. And then the prophetic clock starts ticking again. Right now we're kind of on pause because this grace church age has wonderfully paused the prophetic clock. But as soon as the church is raptured, tick, 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 that prophetic clock begins to tick again, and we're on Daniel's 70th week, and these things will quickly come to pass. And Jesus could have said, how long, Lord? He may be saying even now, how long, Lord? When can I come for my bride? When can I catch her up? When can we have the wedding feast? And only the Father knows, apparently. Maybe Jesus knows now and He didn't at that point, or I don't know how that works in the Trinitarian unity and all that mystery there. But I do know that He told His disciples only the Father knows. And the Father is going to say, now, at one of these days, He's going to say, it's time. For the time being, He has not said it's time yet. But I want to encourage you that when we have that desperate cry, how long, God? How long is it going to be? Things are getting really tough. Things are getting whacked out. Things are getting dark. How long? Remember that in that there's an assumption that, remember, God is going to. He's going to. And that's a statement of faith and a cry of faith and hope. And so be encouraged, even as your spirit cries out, how long? That's a statement of faith in His nature and His character. And I'm just so thankful that we have that resurrection power to look forward to, that we will be raised with Christ, even as we have experienced that death with him, that baptism, dying and raising again from the dead, that as he died on the cross and we die to our old nature daily, that he will, in his faithfulness and his mercy, he's going to raise us up again in that resurrection power. So God bless you with that encouragement today, and just be thanking him and singing that song that it started off with. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever, and with my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness, thy faithfulness. And with my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness to all generations. God bless you. May he keep you, and may his countenance and his light shine on you today.